Today I decided to do something really crazy and not just make my own coconut yogurt, but also make the coconut milk from shredded coconut first. As you know, if you've been watching my other videos, I've been using a canned coconut milk that is the purest one I can find locally, and it's relatively inexpensive, but it's also extremely watery. There's not a lot of coconut in it, so I thought, why not try making my own? So this was definitely a new adventure. So I used the Bob's Red Mill, as you can see there, and what I ended up with was one bag, came out to 3 cups. And after reading blogs and watching videos and everything, I decided to kind of do my own version of this. So the first thing I'm doing is mixing it up in my Vitamix. Of course, a blender will work for this as well. So I turn it on and get it going. And my goal was just to get it kind of to a point where it's going to get the most into the hot water as possible. What I had forgotten, because it's been such a long time since I was using coconut, is that when you do this, what you end up with eventually pretty much is coconut butter, which is fine. It worked, but it meant it was a little bit more of a pain to scoop out and get ready and everything. So if you end up doing that, don't worry about it if it does turn into the butter, because it still works. So the next thing I did was boil some water and poured it in pretty quickly after boiling it. I know some people don't want like boiling water in there, but I found it was fine. So to clarify, I am doing, for this batch, 3 cups of coconut and 4 cups of boiling water, or almost boiling water. And then I let it sit for about 20 minutes. I should have left it for probably about an hour, but I just got impatient and wanted to get it going. The reason I did want to wait a little bit longer, and should have probably waited a bit longer, is I don't love putting hot fluids into the Vitamix because it is plastic, and it's also not great for the blades in the bottom. So, but it was okay. It wasn't crazy hot. It was just a little hotter than I would have liked. And the longer you let it sit, hopefully the more of the actual coconut you're going to get out of the fiber and into the water, which is what we're really aiming for here. And then I put it back into the blender and ran it on high for 2 minutes to try and get as much as I can out of the fiber and into the milk. That's what we're looking for here. Now you can see I'm using the same pot, and so it's going to have a bit of the mixed up stuff that has not been filtered yet, and that's okay because I'm actually planning to use some of the fiber as well. And we'll see what I do with that in a minute here. So I start off by pouring in the first part of the batch. This takes a little bit of work because I can't get it all in the very first go. And I am using cheesecloth here because this is my first try. I do not have a nut milk bag yet. I wanted to give it a go first and see how it works. So I used an entire pack of cheesecloth for this, so there's lots of layers there because I wanted to make sure that I was really separating the fiber, so I had some control over how much of it is fiber and how much is milk. Because my guess is that if you don't get the fiber out very well, you're probably going to have kind of gritty coconut milk afterwards. I can say, thankfully, that is not the case with mine. You may have caught it there quickly. I know it's sped up right now, but this was a very messy process, and I was making quite a mess at this point. It was squirting out in various different places, and I'll show you some of the pictures of what happened with that. So it was actually a pretty funny time, and I had a good laugh, and then my husband walked in the kitchen and also had a good laugh when he saw how bad it looked afterwards. But ultimately, it was a fun and interesting thing to try. And I will say, yes, I definitely had severe brain fog again. So probably not the best day to be doing this, but I was just so excited to get it going. So you can see here now I am dumping the fiber out as best I can so that I can do the next batch. And I'm not worrying too much about a little bit of it falling in. So there's some of the stuff I squirted out. So yeah, that was fun. And that's not the only area that got sprayed, but that's okay. And as you can see, it's still pretty hot. You can see a little bit of steam coming up, but it is a cold room, so it's not super hot. It's okay, obviously, to touch with my bare hands, so not too bad. And there's some more squirting going on. Yeah, it was a mess. Definitely a giant mess. But I did manage to get at least most of it actually into the pot. So I had a successful product in the end. Yep, squirt, squirt everywhere. I think I'm probably just being a little impatient and wanting to get it out as quickly as I could. So that's kind of partly why I made such a mess. And there's some more mess there. If you go really, really slowly, then you probably wouldn't squirt it everywhere like I did, but oh well, that's okay. I did, by the way, order a nut milk bag, so that's on its way, and hopefully my next batch will come out a little bit easier. And I did end up throwing out this cheesecloth because I just can't imagine being able to get all the fibers out and being able to really use it, and for sure not having anything go moldy inside it. So a nut milk bag will be far more useful, and they're much easier to clean and then reuse. And I did get a cotton one, so I'll be checking that one out and seeing how it goes with my next batch too, which I'm super excited to get started on. So there's my fiber. Don't throw that out. We can use that too. And there is the milk, and that looks thicker to me than, especially being that warm right now, that looks way thicker than the canned coconut milk that I've been using, so I'm kind of excited. So there we go. Yes, there's fiber everywhere too, not just the spraying. And it came out really nicely into just the one jar, which I did put in the fridge overnight because I wanted to see how well it was going to solidify and give me an idea of whether my measurement is on for what I want to make here. So, and there's some of my mess and a little bit more of it. And then some of the fiber that went everywhere, all over the floor and everything else. So there's day one. And now this is fresh out of the fridge, having been in overnight, so probably about 14, 15 hours. It actually didn't really go solid anywhere. You can see there's a bit of water in the middle there. The rest of it does have a nice thickness to it though. So I had hoped maybe that I could separate it out and get rid of some of that water, but ultimately it turned out to be just better to dump the whole thing into the pot and start making the yogurt. So that is what I ended up doing. And I did also measure it out just to make sure that yes, it is 4 cups. So it was 4 cups of water to 3 cups of coconut. And what I ended up with was 4 cups of coconut milk. And a bit of cat hair, because there's always some cat hair in my house. It's amazing my stuff doesn't go moldy more often because of all the cat hair everywhere, but it doesn't, so that's good. So I am boiling it now. Yes, I did get it up to just about boiling when I first made it, but we want to make sure that we give it a really good boil and get rid of any potential bacteria that could have ended up in there or was already in there. So just like I've done with my other videos, doing the same thing, here I am adding some of the fiber, and that I'm using as my prebiotic. Now I also added in just about 2 teaspoons of coconut sugar. And here I am mixing in the agar-agar as well. And where things went crazy was that having severe brain fog, had a hard time figuring out why I only had 4 cups. What I was thinking was 4 cans. I was comparing it 4 cups to 4 cans, thinking that was about the same, but it's not. It's actually half the amount. So I ended up using more of the prebiotic and more of the coconut sugar and more of the agar-agar than I normally would for just these 4 cups here, which would be the equivalent of 2 cans. So basically I doubled everything to put in there, not realizing until it was all done that that was too much. So let's see how it turns out with me making one of my many mistakes along the way with this process. I just managed to mix the agar-agar in really nicely to a good slurry. Does take a little bit of work, but then it all mixed in really, really nicely. And then I get her boiling, work its way up, and stir lots to make sure nothing burns or boils over, as has happened for me. Did a little frothing again with the frother to make sure that everything's nicely mixed, because I love how that works so well. And then I start measuring to make sure we are up to 180 and that it's had a good boil. and put it in the cold water and get it to start cooling down. And I really have to stir it periodically just to make sure that I'm getting the correct temperature. And once it's done, obviously I took it out, got it ready to go, dumped it in. You can see it's cooled off so much that it's starting to thicken up quite a bit there. Then I go ahead and stick it in there and completely forget that I have not put my probiotics in yet. So thankfully I did realize that before I actually got it going. So I grabbed the Mood probiotic and mixed it in. And of course it's still continuing to thicken. So that was a bit of a process to get in. So not ideal, but this is what happens when you have brain fog. You forget things and it all just kind of goes crazy. So the cool thing about that is that as bad as I was that day, I actually managed to get this far and make some yogurt. I also put a jar of just water on the other side just to even it out a little bit, just to see how it compares. And ultimately, I will say that I don't think it made any difference at all either way. So it was worth trying anyway. So I set it at 95 and I put it on for 40 hours. I wasn't going to do the full 40, but I just wanted to have it there in case I needed it for longer, because that's fine too. And then I check it along the way. You can see 26 hours left there, and we're at 100, which was a really nice start. In the meantime, while that is brewing, I decided to bake the fiber. And you can see in there that I put it at 260 and not for a super long time, just kept an eye on it the whole time. And you can see it kind of gets really fogged up. So I had to open that up and clean out the fog a few times, and which is great because we're trying to dehydrate it basically and also get it a little bit browned. So I did that process, didn't take too long. And what I ended up with was a really nice, basically coconut flour that I can use for any number of things and should last for a while as well because it's been dehydrated. And I check again at 20 hours because, you know me, I want to keep checking it and see what's going on. And I was a little concerned at this point because it did get up to 108, and that is the absolute top that we want it to be at. Anything higher and we're potentially going to be losing probiotics. So then again, I checked a little while later and it pretty much ended up between 106 and 108. So it was still not great. And now I am finished, so let's get that temperature for our final product. And we're still at 108, so it actually stayed pretty consistent there, just a little higher than I would have liked, especially for having set it at 95 to start with. That's a little more than I would like. However, it is workable. And I love what I see already. It smells fantastic. There's no sign of mold or anything bad going on here. And this is what's really cool. The texture is fantastic. And it tastes amazing. So this was actually a massive success. This is my favorite yogurt that I've made so far. I will set it to a lower temperature next time, but otherwise I'm going to do this again. Thanks for watching, and God bless.